You're listening to the Dworkin Report. Here with me today is MSNBC contributor, YouTuber, and author of the new book, Shameless, which was released on Tuesday, Mr. Brian Tyler Cohen. How are you doing today?
Scott, thank you so much for having me on. Looking forward to this.
I appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got a great book out, and so we'll send that out to everybody so that they can go and purchase it right now.
Thank you.
But we can start off with. I'm just curious, what made you get into politics in the first place? Because it's like such a crazy gambit to get into, and so like, what exactly actually got you into politics in the first place?
I was always just passionate about it, and I actually did it in my free time. When I first moved out to LA, I moved out there to be an actor, to work in the entertainment industry. And ironically enough, my first job was working at Fox, where I was the assistant to the comedy and drama development managers. So that was driving to the Fox lot every day was my first job, which was in retrospect kind of weird. But even then, in my spare time, I used to write articles that I would submit to HuffPost and they would just publish them. And it wasn't a paid thing or anything. I was just a volunteer. And I was always super passionate about it. And working in the entertainment industry was tough because, it's one of the hardest industries to break into. And also you have to wait on 10, 20, 30, 40 people to give you permission to do anything. Your whole career is dependent on other people saying yes. And then I got into the political space, which I loved, and I was like, well, I can shoot my own stuff. I have a background in entertainment. I can write my own stuff because I'm passionate about politics. And so I just kind of married the two, started creating video content for nobody, really, and putting it on YouTube and on Facebook every single day. And that was about 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, and getting our moms to vote. Some folks might not find that accomplishment, a big one, but for me, it is. If they hadn't ever done so, especially before, as you detailed in the book, you and I seem a lot alike there. When we started doing things on social media, we assumed we might be talking to ourselves, right? And at first I was, right?
Yeah,
I didn't know how to use hashtags. I had like 15 hashtags that I would write. If I did
yeah.
video posts, it was the same thing, a whole mess. Did you ever think you'd be able to reach so many people throughout the world as you have now?
No, I don't think anybody could have a schema for this kind of thing. I mean, I did it. I did it, and I was happy if I was able to reach tens of people. I was just trying to do something that I thought was good, and it was just being able to speak my mind on these issues. But I realized in pretty short order how much of a hunger there was on the left for some type of antidote to the sprawling right-wing ecosystem that we've been contending with for a long time, from the days of Rush Limbaugh, which eventually gave way to the Roger Ailes memo, Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, Ben Shapiro's outlets, Steve Bannon, the whole thing. And we've never really had an answer to that because for so long, Democrats have looked at the mainstream media as their version of the media, as our side, really. And the mainstream media is not a democratic outlet. They're not here on behalf of the Democrats. The conservative outlets are there on behalf of the Republican Party. The mainstream outlets are so opposed to being labeled liberal that they actually bend over backwards to pander to and cater to the Republicans and the right-wing outlets. And that's why we have so much both sides media coverage. That's why we have so much focus on stuff like Hillary's emails and on the Hunter Biden scandal, even though there's no there, but because the media is pretty much led by a Republican Party that knows that they can game the refs, this is the situation that we're in right now.
Lots of folks, including myself, have a big problem with how mainstream media, I guess would be defined, covers news, especially when they repeat Trump's lies and put them in the headlines, things like that. You're one of the few who is not part of the problem, like Joy Reid, a good friend, Rachel Maddow, Lawrence O'Donnell, who just called out press in general
Yeah.
for the press conference, and Donald's doing another one tomorrow. A few others there. What do you think is happening here with the news, and how can we possibly fix it?
Well, I think that those people calling out their colleagues is so important. And I also think they recognize the impact that independent progressive media is having. Because, look, the share of people who are now getting their news from YouTube and from indie platforms has already exceeded that of legacy media, of linear TV. And so they clearly see the threat that independent media poses. And I think they recognize that if they continue to keep up the both sides bullshit, it's only going to further push people away. It's already easier right now to get your news from independent media and to go onto YouTube than it is to get your news the way you used to 10, 20, 30 years ago. So that's already a threat to them. But I do think that both that and their own colleagues calling them out and pushing them to do better and to properly cover Donald Trump, knowing full well that covering him in the proper way is not evidence of bias. That if he's lying, it's like you don't have to equate everything Donald Trump does with something that a Democrat does for it to be acceptable to talk about. And we have to recognize that it's okay to have a bias in favor of democracy, for example. The liberal press, the liberal media, and I don't mean that in terms of the Democratic Party. I mean, just having a liberal press in this country has a vested interest in making sure that we stay a democracy because, we're all on this plane, Scott. And if the plane goes down, the press goes with it. If we slip into authoritarianism, what's the first thing that happens? The free and fair press goes away. And so they have a vested interest in making sure that they advocate on behalf of democracy. And so when we see somebody like Donald Trump, who is a threat to democracy, he's also a threat to the media as it stands right now. And so it's okay to report on that without feeling like you also have to throw a Democrat under the bus to make it feel equal or to make it feel fair.
Right. And let's say you're at the press conference, right? You're at this one of these press conferences that Trump's giving. How do you get him to answer your questions? Like, is there a certain way you would phrase things, or is it just impossible because he's just going to lie and meander around and
Well,
then throw you
he's
off?
certainly going to lie. Yeah, I mean, he's going to try. I think what you do, and I've spoken with Mehdi Hassan about this, and you can also look at Jonathan Swan. You focus on one lie and just hold him to that, and you keep digging in deeper and deeper and deeper, and hold him to account for one lie, and don't let him use the strategy of Gish Gallop to basically throw so much at you that you don't know where to go. And you just focus on one thing and you hold them to account for it. Of course, Donald Trump will never be face to face with somebody like me. And so what I do from my vantage is, I'm lucky enough to have a YouTube channel where I can stream his press conferences and his rambling screeds and streams of consciousness, and I can fact check in real time. And I think that we have a responsibility to do that because, we watched what happened in 2016 when he was basically given carte blanche to manipulate viewers and outright lie to them, and he was able to get through to a lot of them, but we have to learn from the mistakes of the past.
Yeah, and I mean, he is shameless. And speaking of your book, your new book is titled Shameless. Why'd you choose that title? What's the book about?
I chose it because I've looked at all of the purported virtues of the Republican Party, the things that they beat their chests about, this notion that they're the party of family values, the party of fiscal responsibility, of states' rights, of the Constitution, of law and order, of the military, of law enforcement, all of these things that are purported values. And in reality, they actually don't comport with those values at all. Their behavior is completely antithetical to those values. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm saying, you call yourself the party of family values, and yet your standard bearer right now is a guy who was just found guilty on 34 felony counts for charges related to an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. This is the party of family values? The party of the Constitution is the only party that refused to abide by the peaceful transfer of power in the over 200-year history of this country. The party of fiscal responsibility added $7.8 trillion to the debt. The party of states' rights tried to sign on to a Texas lawsuit seeking to invalidate the election results in 4 other states because they didn't like the outcomes there. And so I just looked at this and saw how shameless they were about it. And yet they still get credit for being better on the economy. They still get credit for being better on national security. They still get credit on being these constitutionalists. And so I thought that the more that we sought to expose the reality behind their branding, the better off we'll be, the better informed we'll be, and the less credit they'll get heading into another election cycle.
With the changing political environment, especially last month, everything going, nobody could have predicted how they went, with Biden to Harris and everything
Right.
going on. Even with the changing political environment, I saw that the book still holds up, and that's impressive. So,
Thanks.
how did you, how did you kind of come up with, it's there's a lot of luck and also just strategy there. I mean, it's impressive. But like, I guess one of the things I wanted to point out is, what's something, because you've been doing a lot of interviews and you have a lot of book events coming up, but what's something in the book that really struck you, that you haven't had the chance to talk about yet?
I think something that if I can go back and kind of make a slight change, it's to focus on the intangible of some optimism and hope in an election cycle. And I talk a lot about, the virtues of certain types of messaging and of the media infrastructure, being able to disseminate that messaging and being relentless in our pursuit of the truth and all that stuff. But I think the one thing that I missed that I would love to have added was the importance of hope and optimism. And we're seeing that right now with Kamala Harris's campaign. And a lot of people, there's not a lot of daylight between Biden's agenda and Kamala Harris's agenda. The platforms are virtually identical, but so many people checked out of the political process during Biden's presidency because there wasn't that sense of hope. There wasn't that sense of optimism. He wasn't able to prosecute that case against Donald Trump. For as good a president as he is, he was a bad candidate. He was bad at prosecuting the case for why he should have a second term. And so when Kamala Harris came in and proved herself out to be this joyful warrior, I think it showed a lot of people that we can actually have some hope in the political process. And look how many people came back in as the result of that. Look at how the endorsements rained down. Look at how much money she raised. Look at how many volunteers signed up. That's all a testament to the fact that there has to be some positivity in these elections, that it can't just be doom and gloom and protecting ourselves from the impending demise of democracy. That's a tough pill to swallow every day. And I don't blame people for checking out when that's all we hear on a daily basis. So I do think that we have to look to the lessons of 2008 with Barack Obama's election, and now what we're seeing again with Kamala Harris, and that is the importance of imbuing and conferring some degree of hope, and that will kind of blot out the sun in terms of Donald Trump's message of fear and vengeance and retribution, which clearly has, potency, but there's a ceiling. And I think that ceiling is not going to be enough to overcome what the Democrats are building right now.
Yeah, and I see that a lot with Walls. I was blown away. He did this speech in front of Ask Me in LA yesterday, and so something that kind of got overlooked or buried in the press, but he had, yeah, I guess he didn't call out JD Vance, but he responded to the lies and all the comments about his stolen valor, which is not true,
Yeah.
by the way, by thanking him for his service and thanking him for risking his life. Like it was, I was like, that's how it's done. That's how you respond to this nonsense. And I just was very, it's been a while. I've been in campaign politics for 2 decades. Started a long time ago. My first presidential was in Raleigh, North Carolina, with Carrie Edwards' campaign, being an intern, bringing hot dogs to, the pollsters and the people. We had
Yeah.
Scantrons where we were scanning things with
Oh yeah. Oh
we
yeah.
were lucky to have that. If you were the person to get in there first, you'd get the little scanner. Otherwise, you're doing it by hand while making
Yeah.
phone calls. Back in the day. But I guess with also, with the addition of Walls and everything that's going on right now, just a quick kind of like, what do you think is going to happen this election cycle with the presidential, House, and the Senate? Like, what is your landscape? Like, what do you think the outcome is going to be? And I won't hold you to it.
Okay, well that's good because I'm terrible at predicting everything. I don't think I've properly predicted one single thing in politics in the last 5 years, but I'll do my best. If I was correct at predicting anything, Hillary Clinton would be finishing up her second term right now. So that goes to show you how good I am at political predictions. But I think if I had to guess, I would say right now Democrats flip the House. It is a straight toss-up in terms of what happens in the Senate, only because of John Tester's seat in Montana. I think Democrats are able to hold every other seat. John Tester's seat is a one spot where there's some concern. I mean, you look at Montana, it's a plus 20 something state for Republicans. So it remains to be seen whether Tester can hold on to that seat. But I think it's important that we do everything we can to support that campaign. And I do think that Kamala Harris will win the presidency. I think there's a 47% ceiling with Donald Trump, but the way that he's dissembling right now in the face of the ascendant campaign from Kamala Harris is a testament to the fact that he's not gonna help himself in these weeks and months that are coming up. Kamala Harris will continue to garner more attention, and it will continue to send Donald Trump back against the wall. And when his back is against the wall, he gets even more extreme and more unhinged, which I think is just going to hurt him with exactly the voters that he needs to reach out to, which are independent voters and suburban voters and young people and people of color. And when he's out there denying the biraciality of Kamala Harris when he's out there bragging that his January 6th insurrection crowd is bigger than Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech crowd, when he's out there trashing union workers by cozying up to Elon Musk. All this does is hurt him and distance himself from the very communities that he has to make inroads with. And I think we're just going to see more of that because Trump's narcissism doesn't allow him to see what he sees, which is this idea that more Trump is always better. I mean, it's just he's been conditioned, thanks to 2016, to think so long as I can grab the attention and shove myself in front of people's eyeballs, whether it's on their phones or their TVs, that I'll win, just like I did in 2016. But in fact, all he's doing is reminding people of the chaos and the dysfunction that enveloped this country back when he was president. And so this is one of those rare instances where I'm like, let the guy talk. If he wants to get up there and have press conferences, be my guest. We'll happily rebut him, but in fact, he's going to dig himself into a way deeper hole than anybody else can.
I agree. I always finish up every interview, especially after that, by getting some hopeful words from my guests. So, Brian, the floor is yours. What would you say to someone who's maybe struggling about this election, doing some great volunteer work, really working hard, but it's just they do see him and they see him lurking and they see him. What would you say? Some hopeful words to them.
Totally. I would say that you have agency, and we're not asking you to do a lot, but here's what you can do. The difference in 2020 in Wisconsin, largely believed to be the tipping point state, between a Biden win and a Trump loss was 2 votes per precinct. That's it. That's all Biden won by. If Donald Trump was able to flip 2 votes per precinct, he'd have won that state. And so for everybody out here watching, all you have to do is just find 2 people, 1 or 2 people in your circles of people who wouldn't have otherwise voted, who are susceptible to misinformation, who maybe just turned 18 and are eligible to vote, and make those people your responsibility. And just you alone could be the difference in the 2024 election between a Kamala Harris win and a Trump win in a very close state or a very close district, for example. So again, to harken back to what I said in the beginning of this piece here, we're not asking you to do everything, but we are asking you to do something. And I think if everybody does do something, does their small part, it can absolutely have an impact in this election, which is going to be won on margins of not millions, not hundreds of thousands, maybe not even tens of thousands, but just thousands of votes in a few states and a few districts. And we can all have a really big impact. That is why Republicans work so hard to prevent us from voting, because they know exactly how potent it actually can be.
Y'all know me. I don't recommend things very often. Go buy Brian's book right now. Shameless.
Thank you.
BrianTylerCohen.com/book. That's Brian with an I. We'll have a link to his book, and Substack will be in the episode's notes. Thanks again for joining us, Brian. Best of luck, and we'll look forward to connecting with you after the election, maybe to recap our calls. I'm guessing that you are correct. So
Oh, I appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time. I appreciate that.
thanks so much.